No, not water. No. If you said golf ball, you are correct. Anybody guess golf ball? Jin? Yeah? Yeah? I know Jin's always thinking about golf, maybe. Maybe that was in his brain. Guess that picture. Guess that picture. Oh, pencil. Good guess. No. Violin. Good guess, Pastor Howard. Give up? I'll give you a clue. Everybody was touching this morning. Or I hope they were. It is a seatbelt. Seatbelt. Good guess. Good guess. Last one. What is that? Anybody can take a guess? What's that? I'll give you a clue. If you look at Rich and Minu and me, glasses. Good job. It is a real close-up of glasses. Glasses. So, as you might have guessed, the point of that exercise was to show what? Limited perspective. Good job. What else? We don't always see the big picture. That's right. Good job, class. Give your neighbor a pat on the back. Good job, everybody. Good job. And so that's the theme of today's hero and story. We've been covering different heroes of the faith. We have examined different characteristics of people we admire, be it bravery, be it faith, be it humility. There are aspects that we can look up to, different men and women in the Bible. There are traits that I do not have that I look up to. One of the traits that I lack is patience. Patience. And as out of endurance, the ability to endure is one that really escapes me. Why would anyone want to endure suffering? I want to run away. Joseph is one of the heroes of the faith. I admire his steadfast endurance. He endured time in prison, being banished from his family and brothers, also being wrongly accused of a crime he did not commit. And with that, I want to highlight that his endurance came as a result of God's timing. God's timing helped Joseph become the man of faith he eventually became. And maybe, the picture, it will become clearer. Three things I want to talk about with God's timing, resulting in Joseph's blessing. Talking about first, God's timing in discipline. God's timing in discipline. Genesis 37, it says, "Now Israel," or Jacob, "loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him." I claim Joseph to be a hero of the faith. Truth is, he didn't really start off that way. Younger Joseph could be characterized as arrogant, impulsive, lacking self-awareness. Truth is, the discipline Joseph endured was harsh, but God's timing molded Joseph through these trials. Early on, we learned Joseph, he was spoiled. Any of you spoiled growing up? Raise your hand. Yeah, I didn't think so, right? You wouldn't raise your hand if you were, right? That surprises me. Okay, all right. This kid was his father's favorite, so much so that he got a new robe of many colors and all. Not only that, Joseph was gifted. God gave him a supernatural ability to be able to interpret dreams. And Joseph, being self-aware, being humble, goes to his many older brothers, 10 in all, and says, "Hey guys, guess what? I had a dream, and in that dream I was ruling all over you, and you bowed down to me and kissed my feet." And pretty cool, right? And can you imagine doing that to your older siblings, growing up? This little snot-nosed kid, the audacity, he's not very likable at that moment. And Joseph's older brothers, not wanting this spoiled kid to rule over them, they send him off and sell him to an Egyptian and make up a story to their dad that he was eaten by some wild beasts. And there's a lesson, don't rub it in your sibling's face. And Joseph gets sold, and the comfortable life he once knew is gone. In the blink of an eye, his favorite child is gone. The dad thinks he's been eaten alive, and the brothers agree to never speak of this ever again. So how's that for family drama? And you thought your family needed family therapy, right? Can you imagine these 12 in a room with a family therapist, 10 older brothers, saying that they sold their younger brother, Joseph saying he's going to rule over them all, and the dad's like, but he's my favorite. I even knit a colorful sweater for him. Like, could you imagine all of that going on in that room, right? But we talk about God's timing. God disciplined Joseph. Discipline is for those whom God loves. Not only to rebuke, shame, or to make them feel bad, but discipline is done out of love, so that the child will grow. Imagine if God didn't discipline Joseph at this moment. This kid would have grown more and more entitled. He would have walked around thinking everybody owes him something. Starting off with his dad, he had the whole world handed to him. Not only that, he's gotten some supernatural abilities given by God. I mean, he's won the spiritual lottery here. Have you ever noticed people like this? They think that the world not only revolves around them, they think that everybody needs to tip them 20% just for showing up. These are people that have such a conflated ego, just being around them is draining. And Joseph, while young, needed correction. He needed discipline. And his dad wasn't going to do that for him. He would just give him another colorful sweater to wear. So God was the one who paved the way. Just when Joseph was reaching adulthood, as he was maturing, God knew that in his timing, he would send Joseph through the ringer. This is true of Joseph, and it's true of all of us. Maybe you've experienced it or are experiencing it right now. Maybe God is giving you this hard season right now to refine you, to grow you. Maybe at times it feels like a punishment. It feels like it's too much to endure. I felt a little bit of what Joseph was going through. My first ministry job was in Houston at an Asian American church. I don't think I deserved that job as a youth pastor right out of seminary, but God placed me there for a few years. At first, I didn't think I belonged. This is a big ministry. It's a lot of youth and parents. It's a lot of pressure. I don't think I'm cut out for this. And as time passed, people started giving me credit for things I didn't really do. They'd be like, hey, Ensu, thanks for taking care of the kids. You're really swell. And swelled up my head got. And, they'd be like, oh, wow, you're so much better than our previous youth pastor. He was old. You're young, you're cool. Nobody ever said that, but I felt it, right? Right? And they'd be like, you're so godly and you're a role model. Once again, nobody said those things, but I felt it, right? And you know what? Soon enough, I started to take credit for the work I was doing. I thought it was my show. I thought it was my ministry, my kids. And, I walk around feeling good about myself and being like, look at me, I'm a phenom, I'm young, I'm a hot shot, right? I don't know about hot shot, more like. So anyhow, as I became more full of myself, like Joseph, I would say silly things I never dreamed I'd say before. And then, bear with me, the cringe level is real. I'd say, man, I am so gifted. Look at me, I'm such a good pastor. And, I need bigger ministry opportunities. I want to speak at large conferences. And it sounds dumb, but that's how I walked and talked. I would show up to work when I wanted, leave when I wanted, and felt people owed me just Thanksgiving for being there. It's amazing what entitlement does to a person. All that to say, the next season of ministry wasn't as exciting as Houston. I applied to a bunch of jobs, got rejected from those churches, ended up moving it back with my in-laws for a few years, door dashing as my second career. And while my in-laws were kind and generous, it was still humiliating. It was confusing, and I would keep asking, God, what happened? I was on the right trajectory. I was on my way to stardom. You can laugh at that. That's a stupid thing to say. I was on my way to stardom, and I'm a failure. And yes, I do believe in God's timing. It was His way of correcting me for my arrogance. I wasn't a great husband. I wasn't a good Christian. And I was becoming more and more self-absorbed. It's not a stretch to say if I would have stayed on that path in Houston, I might have lost a marriage. I might have lost a ministry. Maybe I was headed towards some really destructive thinking and behaviors. I didn't welcome God's discipline. I don't know if Joseph did either, No arrogant, entitled person decides out of the blue and prays, hey, yo, God, I'm getting a big head, care to ruin my life for me, bro? Like, nobody ever prays that prayer. And yet God knew what Joseph needed. He also knew what I needed. Some humility. My favorite pie is pecan. What's yours? Answer should be humble pie. That's right, humble pie. Humble pie, slice of humble pie. Perhaps God might be preparing you for a season like Joseph. A season for growth, a season for correction. Maybe a season for discipline. God's timing in protection. This next section here, Genesis 39. The Lord was with Joseph so he prospered. He lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. If we were to look at Joseph's life in the graph, it would not look like this, a straight line towards holiness. As more time goes, the holier he gets. In fact, most of us expect our journey to growing with God to look like this trajectory, a straight line. And as outlined in this life and many others, it's much more like this, something that you might see in a stock market, an up and down, confusing chart that don't make much sense. Every time Joseph felt like life was getting good, something bad happened. As soon as things look bleak, he gets a favor, then bad again, up and down and up and down and up and down it goes. So looky here. Lord was with Joseph. He gave Joseph success in everything that he did. So much so that he succeeded in a foreign land. He was sold as a slave to the Egyptians. The story should end right there, and yet God didn't give up on Joseph. He had a bigger story in place. He would redeem Joseph, arrogance and all, use this once immature kid to save thousands and thousands of people. God protected Joseph as a part of his plan and his timing. We see that over and over again. Despite misfortunes, God is actually protecting Joseph, sometimes from himself, but other times from dangers. God gave Joseph favor. He was able to work comfortably for an Egyptian master named Potiphar. And things were getting good. You know what happened? Joseph found favor in the eyes of his master's wife. It said Joseph was a good-looking hottie with a body, a Sigma guy with Riz, as I would say. And you can cringe on that, Gen Z, but just remember, you too will be old one day and people won't be laughing at your jokes, so you can laugh at me now. Just kidding. So Potiphar's wife, really wants to have Joseph for herself. And Joseph, being a man of integrity, says, no, these are my no-no squares, stay away. No. And Potiphar's wife gets mad and accuses this young man of assaulting her. And into jail, Joseph goes. A few moments in Joseph's life, he would have thought about his options. When he got sold to the Egyptians, I would have gone to despair. I probably would have lost hope. Things were getting good. Joseph's getting a job, making a living. He gets put in jail for a crime he never committed, touching his master's wife. The first hurdle of getting sold to Egypt, that probably would have broken my hopes. That second one, when it seems God was about to turn my life around, for him to close another door and send me to jail, I think I would have been indignant. I would have been like, justice for Joseph, this is not fair. It would have upset me so much. And later on, we realize even in the jails, God chose favor on Joseph. He was protected even in the foreign land with foreign criminals. And it's amazing because my first reaction is to be amazed at Joseph's endurance for overcoming a lot. If this were a Hollywood movie, we would be like, look at this man taking all this abuse, inspirational. Joseph is enduring. But we would be missing the mark. It's actually God who gave Joseph protection. It's God that in his timing, he's been pulling the strings, he's been orchestrating in the background. As strange as that sounds for a man who was sold to slavery for many years, Joseph had protection. God protected Joseph from the beast, even the full wrath of his brothers. God protected Joseph when he was accused of a crime. He was put into jail, but still found favor with God. And as we'll see in later times, he was protected from the upcoming famine in the land where his family remained. We're so short-sighted, we forget that God cares for us and protects us. He protects our families, our church, our marriages, our careers. What I mean by that is that not every job, not every family, it turns out perfectly, nor a church stays intact. In fact, it's that God's got the whole picture while we do not. It's not clear right now. It seems that right now it feels like God's hand is crushing you. Maybe it feels like, why is he allowing pain upon our family, our loved ones? We don't understand, and nobody here is going to give you an answer like saying, hey, buddy, it's all going to work out, and because but you know what? That's not our place to question. After my hiatus from ministry, after being a moocher off of my in-laws, I worked for a time at a church in Highlands Ranch. Kind of like how Joseph felt like the things were on the up and up, a lot happened for me in Grosh in 2021. I got this job at a big church, a white church. I was like, oh man, I always wanted to be white growing up. Wow. And so this was in my mind a huge honor. We just bought a place of our own with the help of my parents, and life was actually pretty good for a season. It seemed too good to be true. I was like, wow, is this season of waiting really over? Is it going to work out? And for a good chunk of my next season, things did work out. I was thriving in a new ministry. Grasha was finishing school to be a PTA. We had a home, and we were happy. And then just like that, I ran into some trouble with new leadership. I had a meeting with HR, and I was let go in the fall of 22. There was no moral failure or anything illegal, but new leadership and I didn't see eye to eye, and I was let go. It was over. I felt like I was making new strides, and it was just a heartbreak. I felt betrayed by God in some sense. God, why did you tease me with this new opportunity just to take it away? I didn't even get to say goodbye to the people that I loved. And I felt a lot of guilt and shame. Did I do this to myself? And I guess what I'm trying to say is that while, even now, 2024, I don't see the full picture, this much is clear. I'm grateful that God protected us amidst that turbulent season. Things could have definitely gone more south, if I'm being honest, but looking back, getting fired from that church discovered a lot of new opportunities. If I would have stayed at that church, it's possible I could have been burnt out or quit on my own or maybe given up in ministry. Looking back, I do believe God was protecting us from a situation that we could not sustain. And I still love that church and students, but it wasn't going to be a long-term situation for us. I know we're still new to this community, but man, it's clear that God's timing was much greater. The fact that we're still attending church, the fact that I still get to do ministry here, the fact that I still get to see students, he protected me from myself and harm I never could have expected. Maybe you also cannot see the full scope of what God might be doing in a turbulent season. I hope we can rest assured in the fact that just as God protected Joseph from danger, sometimes his own arrogance and people who wanted to harm him, God has also got you. Maybe not the way that you and I would have scripted it, but he's got you. Don't ask him how the script's going to end, but ask him, how can I trust you in this time? And finally, God's timing in provision. Near the end, Genesis 50, his brothers also came and fell down before him and said, "Behold, we are your servants." Joseph said to them, "Do not fear, for I am in the place of God. As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today." So we're going to the climax of the story. Near the end, after Joseph gets in prison, a few things happen. He still has his gift of interpreting dreams, so he uses those dreams to interpret those in Pharaoh's court. And once again, it's kind of a roundabout way to how he gets to the end, because the first guy that Joseph interpreted dreams for, he kind of forgets about him. But eventually, Joseph makes it back to Pharaoh, and he interprets his dream. And at the end of it, he helps prevent disaster, because God reveals famine is coming to the land, and Joseph helps make a plan in place so that they can prepare and thrive during this time. And at the end of the story, his brothers come back to Egypt in the famine. And surprise, surprise, they meet Joseph once again, not as a baby brother, but second in command in this large, large foreign nation. And Joseph says this really amazing thing. He says, "I'm not mad at you anymore. In fact, God knew this would happen. He is the one that actually sold me to Egypt. What you meant for evil, God used for good." Does that kind of sound familiar? You see some parallels to the gospel? What man and Satan meant for evil in the cross, God used for good in salvation. We'll go back to that in just a minute. But at the end of it, Joseph became second in command in all of Egypt, which is a huge honor. This was God's timing, not Joseph's. And imagine if Joseph, as a little kid, arrogant kid, would have become that. He was not ready. And this doesn't mean that God's going to give everything and everything's going to work out in the end. But look what happens in Joseph's life. God provided not only for Joseph, but his whole clan, the nation of Israel. God used this one spoiled brat, uses gifts which he used to brag about, and at the end of it, God saved many, many nations because of his timing. I mean, he used this little boy, now grown man named Joseph. He endured a lot. He endured being sold, accused wrongly, being forgotten about, being put in prison, abandonment. And at the end of it all, somehow, some way, God made it all work for Joseph's good and his glory. The gospel is so rich in this little story. Yes, Joseph endured betrayal from his brothers, much like Jesus endured betrayal from his own creation. Yes, Joseph was wrongly accused and put in jail, but Jesus, without any sin, he endured the cross. What Joseph's brothers meant for evil, God used for good to save a nation. What we people meant for evil in crucifying Jesus, God used to save us, a wicked people, to save sinful humans. The Old Testament is so rich with stories like this about the gospel. So let's not close our eyes to see how God's plan is always, always greater than ours. The story of salvation and redemption is in every book of the Bible. God's timing versus our timing. Joseph became a man of faith, a man of endurance, only because he was molded by God's timing. The result is a man of endurance. But the catalyst of change that transformed him was God and trusting God under his timing. Result is a man of endurance, but the catalyst of change that transformed Joseph was God's timing. I think we all struggle in some way or another of waiting, not seeing the full picture, struggling in our current state. It is hard to put the pieces together sometimes. Our finite brains. As we started our journey into Joseph's life this morning, with that game, seeing that limited view, only zooming out do we see a full, clear picture. I hope and pray that we can all become a people who can not just see a part of the picture and assuming the worst or the best. Because God's timing differs from our own. And in his timing, in his beautiful timing, he created a masterpiece. Maybe one more image for you. Maybe right now, it looks like this. It's blurry, it's pixelated, it doesn't really seem like much. You're like, oh, I don't really see the whole picture. Maybe that's what it looks like right now. It's a struggle. And maybe at the end of it, the focus will be on a bigger picture, a sunrise, a beauty, his glory, redeeming love in your life. So let's all pray that those are the people that we can become. Let's close.